September 1944, Lorraine, France. The air is thick, white, and suffocatingly cold. If you were a soldier in the Third Army, you knew that the most dangerous sound in warfare wasn't the scream of an artillery shell or the rattle of a machine gun. It was the silence. For weeks, General George S. Patton's forces had been tearing across France at a breakneck pace, devouring territory and shattering German lines. But now everything had stopped. The engines of the Sherman tanks were cold, the tracks were still, and in that heavy, unnatural silence, a new sound began to drift through the dense morning fog. It was a low, rhythmic grinding noise. Then came the squeal of metal on metal, then the deep, guttural roar of heavy engines. Thousands of American soldiers strained their ears against the mist, their hearts hammering against their ribs. They couldn't see 5 feet in front of their faces, but they knew exactly what was coming. They knew the sound of the Maybach HL-230 engine. It was the sound of the Panther tank. The hunters had become the hunted, and George Patton, the most aggressive general in the Allied command, had just walked his army into a trap that threatened to wipe the Third Army off the map. Welcome to WW2 Survival. Today we are uncovering the Battle of Arcourt, the moment when Adolf Hitler tried to spring a perfect trap on George Patton, and how the American commander saw the one thing the Germans missed. To understand how Patton ended up in this death trap, we have to look at the map 2 weeks earlier. By late summer 1944, the German Wehrmacht was in a full retreat. Patton's Third Army was moving so fast that his intelligence officers couldn't keep up with their own location. They were unstoppable. But then they hit an enemy that no tank could defeat: logistics. In a controversial political decision, Allied Supreme Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower diverted the bulk of the fuel supplies north to Field Marshal Montgomery for Operation Market Garden. Suddenly, the beast was starved. On August 31st, Patton's spearheads ran dry. The most mobile army in history was paralyzed in the Lorraine region of France. Patton was furious. He paced his command bunker, screaming that he could end the war in days if he just had the gas. But across the lines, the German high command didn't hear his anger. They only saw his immobility. For Hitler and his top tank commander, Hasso von Manteuffel, this was a miracle. They saw a stranded American army spread thin, with its fuel tanks empty and its flanks exposed. This was the bait, but the trap needed one more element to be perfect: the fog. In 1944, the U.S. Army relied heavily on air superiority. The P-47 Thunderbolts were Patton's guardian angels, blasting German armor before it could get close. But in September, the weather turned. Heavy rains and thick fog grounded the American Air Force. The skies were empty. The tanks were dry. The trap was set. Hitler ordered the 5th Panzer Army to assemble in secret. Their mission was simple: smash into Patton's exposed flank, encircle the Third Army, and destroy them while they sat helpless in the mud. It was a textbook blitzkrieg maneuver, designed to exploit the very aggression that made Patton famous. On September 18th, the trap snapped shut. German Panthers emerged from the mist near the town of Arcourt. These were superior machines: thicker armor, bigger guns, and better optics than the American Shermans. Under the cover of fog, the Germans believed they were invisible. They advanced with confidence, believing the Americans were blind, deaf, and paralyzed. But Manteuffel had made a fatal miscalculation. He assumed that because Patton couldn't move forward, he didn't know how to fight standing still. He assumed the trap was the geography and the fuel shortage. But Patton looked at the same battlefield and saw something the Germans didn't. Patton realized that the fog didn't just blind the Americans, it blinded the Germans too. The superior range of the German 75mm guns was useless if they couldn't see a target until they were 50 yards away. Patton saw that the weather had leveled the playing field. He realized that this wasn't a defensive stand. It was an opportunity for a different kind of warfare. He ordered his tank crews to do something counterintuitive. He didn't order a retreat. He ordered them to use the silence. The American 4th Armored Division, under Patton's philosophy, turned off their engines. They hid their Sherman tanks behind barns, in tree lines, and in the dips of the terrain. They turned the battlefield into a maze. Instead of trying to outgun the Panthers, they waited. They listened. The German tanks, confident in their assault, roared through the fog, their engines screaming, their commanders shouting orders. They were noisy, arrogant, and blind. This was the moment the trap inverted. As the silhouette of a Panther tank would emerge from the gray mist, exposing its weaker side armor, an American 76mm gun would be waiting in absolute silence. Boom, one shot. Then silence again. The Battle of Arcourt devolved into a chaotic, swirling melee in the fog. It was a game of cat and mouse played with 30-ton monsters. The Germans found themselves driving into kill zone after kill zone. Their tactical advantage, long-range power, was erased by the claustrophobic environment Patton forced them to fight in. The American crews, trained in mobility and initiative, used the confusion to flank the heavier German tanks. Patton watched the reports flood into his headquarters. He saw the numbers that the German high command couldn't believe. In the span of a few days, the helpless Third Army destroyed over 200 German tanks and assault guns. The 4th Armored Division lost only a fraction of that number. The cream of Hitler's Panzer Force was left burning in the French mud, destroyed not by overwhelming air power, but by the tactical brilliance of a commander who refused to accept he was trapped. When the skies finally cleared and the P-47s returned, the battle was effectively over. Hasso von Manteuffel, one of Germany's best strategists, had to retreat. He later admitted that he had underestimated the adaptability of the American tanker. He had set a trap for a starving animal, but he had caught a tiger that didn't need to move to kill. Patton's victory at Arcourt is often overshadowed by the Battle of the Bulge, but it remains one of the finest examples of armored warfare in World War II. It teaches us a brutal lesson about the nature of a trap. A trap only works if the victim behaves the way you expect them to. The Germans expected Patton to panic. They expected him to dig in and wait for death. But Patton saw what they didn't, that the environment is neutral. The fog, the mud, the silence. These aren't disadvantages. They are weapons for the commander who has the will to seize them. Patton didn't just escape the German trap in Lorraine. He dismantled it, piece by piece, and built a graveyard for the Panzerwaffe out of its wreckage. If you want to survive the next story from the front lines of history, make sure to hit that subscribe button for WW2 Survival. We are just getting started. Drop a comment below. Do you think Patton could have ended the war in 1944 if Eisenhower hadn't cut his fuel? Let us know your thoughts. Until next time, keep your eyes on the fog.